Bonjour, welcome to the masterclass. My name is Michel Chapoutier. I am a vine grower, winemaker, and wine lover. All my life, because I start to be a little old now, my vocation was to look for the expression of the terroir. In the whole Europe, we have the strength to have quite 20th century of viticulture. That's mean vineyards for 20th century have been in Europe, in certain places, not everywhere. That's mean that we have in the same time the roots which has transformed, which has digested the soil and permitted this soil to be in a higher quality for vineyards. Through the century, that permitted to have what we call today the AOC organization, which was created in 1930, but which is the pictures of what a different terroir can give. I like to remind that terroir means the soil, the climate, and the human. Human, that is the tradition and the talent of the people in the team. Terroir is the microclimate in a place, but also the vintage, and that is very important. When we put a vintage on a label, that means we must not escape from the vintage. And terroir is also soil, geology and pedology. But what is interesting, it is a soil has to be alive. When I arrived at the winery Chapoutier, my obsession was that appellation contrôlée in the 80s were sometimes become like a gimmick marketing. And for me, they had to become a true scientifical, a truth and a scientifical reality. That's when you are on a granite or when you are on a limestone, on the same grape, you should have a different taste. For this reason, in 91, I started to work the vineyards in biodynamic culture. And today, in our vineyards, the totality of our vineyards are done in biodynamic. As a negociant, we have some suppliers which are sometimes in biodynamic, sometimes in organic farming, and sometimes in chemical farming, or what we say conventional farming, because now there is no more chemical farming. There is more, or not in our region, it's more sustainable farming. Maybe what is the difference between conventional, organic, and biodynamic? Conventional is like, I have a headache and I will take an aspirin to take care of this headache. That means I consider that the headache is a symptom and not a disease. So I take care of the symptom, but I don't take care of the disease. So I take aspirin. When I move to organic farming, it is, I have a headache, instead to take a chemical molecule like aspirin, I will take the same molecule, but as a natural molecule. So I will find the acetyl salicylic molecule in the willow bark. At the origin, aspirin, people, Druid used to take the bark from the willow and they extracted by herb tea, and they remarked that they could take off the headache like that. In biodynamic is, I have a headache, then why do I have a headache? Is it a question of blood pressure? Is it a question of cholesterol? That means at this moment, I make a very clear difference between the symptom and the disease. The question is to not be focused on the symptom, but to look for behind the symptom, where is the disease? Very quickly like that, we arrive in the notion of energy. And it's interesting because when in the 90s, we were speaking about biodynamic, plenty of people were considering us, or the few people in biodynamic, like people who were guru or insect, etc., because we were speaking more of energy and of memory of water. But what is interesting that today, with the help of the quantum mechanics, we arrive also in the biodynamic to show that the think and the proposition of Rudolf Steiner had some scientific based. So that is a very simple way to explain the difference between these three cultures. But if we have to keep in mind that a wine is a fermented product, a fermented grape, and the goal in a wine of AOC, appellation d'origine contrôlée, or appellation d'origine protégée, is to look for the pictures of the terroir. So as a winemaker, my obsession is not to do the best wine as possible. I try to make the best pictures of the terroir as possible. This satellite is interesting because that means that in terroir, I told you, we have vintage. And one of our ideas is to say we don't correct a vintage. We don't try to make the same wine every year. No, we try to keep the difference year after year coming from the climate. If you have a warmer year, we will accept to have more alcohol and less acidity. If we have a colder year, we will accept to have less alcohol and more acidity. And like that, we will keep every year a signature, which is a part of the pictures. So what I propose is now we will taste 6 wines. Some will be in biodynamic, some will be in organic farming. And we will try to speak about the philosophy of these wines. So I start by the first wine, which is 100% Viognier. It is a vin de pays des collines rhodaniennes. It is La Compilate. I will try to show the bottles. Okay. La Compilate. And I like this one because that is our family house since 1996. There is on this place, it's called Compilate because there is a very old Roman house under our farm, our farm is from 1492. And under there is around a very big Roman house. And that is probably where Pontius Pilate used to live for his summer house. You know, Pontius Pilate suicided in 39, in Ponsas, that is at 4 kilometers from where we live. And this vineyard is 10 miles north of Tel Hermitage. We are at an altitude of 350 meters, and we are on a granulite. We will taste another wine on the granulite. What is granulite? Granulite is a granite, but a granite with a percentage of limestone in, which gives the originality to the granite to be alkaline, not acid. So here, because it is my personal vineyard, I wanted to present you this wine, and 100% Viognier. What you will remark in the tasting, of course, you have the signature of the Viognier, but we are on the minerality of the granite. It's very mineral. We find in the granite this nose of minerality. Of course, we find the nose of the Viognier, where we have the white peach, little touch of apricot. And what is interesting is when you will taste this wine, you will have to be concentrated on the level of salt that you will have in the mouth. The level of salt is extremely interesting because to have a high level of salt in a white wine, you need to have at first a low yield. And secondly, you need to have a very high density of microbiological life because the salt, the oligo elements, go to the sap through the roots by the help of the microbiology. So it's for that if you use some herbicide, for some fungicide, you know, all these products which are finishing by IDE. You know, IDE means death. That means you kill the microbiological life. So here, because we have a very we are in the biodynamic, bio-life dynamic in action approach, we can have a very good microbiologic activity which permit to fix all the saltiness. One thing to remark is that you will have also a certain level of carbonic gas. And for a simple reason, for the white wine, I consider that to be like 1.2, 1.3 gram of carbonic gas. It is interesting because at first it is antioxidative. Then it's a good sport during the winemaking process to say, okay, you can rack the barrel after the fermentation, but you have to be extremely soft because you have to keep the carbonic gas of the fermentation. The idea is to still stay this frizzante taste, because that's also permit to find the saltiness of the wine. So sometimes this is not perfectly understood by certain people, because I know that the generation of my parents, for instance, for them, when you had a little touch of carbonic gas, it was like a defect, because that meant that the reason was that the wine had an end of fermentation in the bottles. So for some time, that's need time to explain to the people that we are not on the time where it was done by accident. What is the most important here is carbonic gas is antioxidative, and by this way, we can drop the level of sulfates. The idea is to divide by 3 the level of sulfates. Of course, we are not as far as a vin nature, where there is absolutely no sulfates. We just play with a very low level of sulfates and a very low level of free sulfates. What I want you also to remark is the lengths. By our fermentation, where we work only with wild yeast, where we work also with quite warmer fermentation, each temperature gives an opportunity for each race or wild yeast to take a part of the transformation and to take the opportunity to give an aromatic signature. I mean by this, that a wine is like an aromatic symphony, like musical instrument in a symphonic orchestra. And if you work with selected yeast, one of the risks with the selected yeast is that the yeast will destroy a part of your wild yeast population, and you will lose complexity. It's like if you want to play the Fifth of Beethoven without the coppers, only with violins. So we need to have this diversity. We can lose some power in the taste because we have researched the complexity, but what is interesting, we have a very interesting length. The goal of the wine is to be married with food, and that is always my obsession. I love to cook. I have plenty of friends who are cooks in restaurants all over the world, and I like to cook with plenty of chefs. And the idea is the marriage of the wine with food is done in the taste, not in the nose. So it's for that we look for always the crescendo between the nose, the taste, and the aftertaste. There is no Chapoutier taste, and that's important. We look for the expression of the soil. But you will see that there is some little signatures in the corner of the painting, like this crescendo between the nose, the taste, and the aftertaste in all of our wines. Like sometimes the wine has a nose which is quite close, because that is in the taste that we concentrate. So extremely interesting wine. By the way, we make also a sparkling wine there, which is ancestral fermentation, dry, and 9.5% of alcohol. Interesting. The bubbles is even more interesting than a traditional fermentation in bottle. So we move now to Crozes-Hermitage-les-Messonniers. Crozes-Hermitage-les-Messonniers, so it is in part 100% Marsanne. We are on La Plaine des Châssis, on a sediment soil with a quite interesting level of clay. And a part of is also coming from Channot, where there is more sand with less clay. So we play on the two soils. You will see we have the level of the single vineyards, which are known, where we just want to take pictures of one soil, and one grape on one soil. And then on the level of these wines, we look for the blending of soil on one grape. Characteristic of Marsanne, we have very often this acacia flower, orange. We have also the orange flower. Again, you will find the level of carbonic gas, which is important for our white wines. Then arrive saltiness and the bitterness. I think it's extremely interesting to work with the Marsanne, because Marsanne is a grape which was known for the potential of aging in the past. And it's giving white wines which are able to be aged, not by the help of the acidity, but by, I would say, by its noble bitters. This grape is slightly like tannins bitters. And that's extremely interesting because you can have a young Marsanne, but in Crozes, in Saint-Joseph, or in Hermitage, you can have some Marsanne which can be 10, 20, 30 years. My daughter is born in 1991. And one of my supplier on the time offered me 120 bottle of Crozes Hermitage White 1991. And I've opened some of this bottle. I still have a lot because I wanted to keep it. And but it's in few months, the 30 years of my daughter, and I've opened some bottle of the Crozes Hermitage 91, 100% Marsanne. It was amazing. So I will be happy to serve that to my daughter for her birthday. So that is interesting to remark that one of the characteristics of the Rhone Valley in the north, but also in the south, keep that also in the south, the potential of aging is not coming from the level of acidity. We have what we call terpenic grapes, and you will find some tannins or some bitterness sometimes in the white wines. But these wines are done to play with food, but they are all able, plenty of white Côte-du-Rhône, for instance, are able to be aged, a very long time. Well, very often I had some tasting of a white Côte-du-Rhône, which were sometimes 10 or 15 years old. I speak about regional Côte-du-Rhône. When I was president of Interrhône, I was playing to this, and we were doing some of this tasting because it was fascinating to see that as a regional appellation, we had for the white and for the red, the ability to make some wine with the potential of aging. So what is interesting, you will just jump the Rhône because you have the same grape, you have the same vintage, and you go to the Granilite in Saint-Joseph, which is the next wine. Is that correct? No? No, sorry. Oh, I thought it was a Granilite. So we jump the Rhône and we go to Hongrie. So now this one, it is coming from our vineyard. So if it is in biodynamic culture, it is granitic arène, that's the origin of granite. You have two things. In close to Saint-Péret, you will find sometimes some limestone, but the most interesting in Saint-Péret is when you go in the slope and the foot of the slope, you have the erosion of the granite. Saint-Péret is an appellation where was asleep, and with few people, we took the bet to wake up this appellation with a very interesting potential. This appellation used to do a lot of sparkling because in 19th century, the sparkling from Saint-Péret was the most expensive sparkling of France, more than champagne. So sometimes I have difficulty as a champagne lover to understand the taste of the 19th century. But what's happened is that this appellation with a potential of 2,000 hectares had quite 40 or 50 hectares left. and people were not working anymore in the slope. And we can go to a quite high altitude, and we can go to extract a very interesting minerality on the granites. Then we have, again, the signature of the Marsanne, which is the linden, the acacia flower. We find also here, we don't have, as usually on this vintage 19, the orange flower, but we have a genêt, broom, I think, broom flower. And we have also some white peach. We say pêche de vigne, vineyard peach, which is a specific a species of peach that we used to find in the vineyards and quite in the north and south of the Rhone Valley. Quite rare to find now, but it's very characteristic. Here, of course, because we go more in altitude, then we have a wine which is a little more nervous by comparison of what we had in the Meissonier. But we can't say that it is nervous wine. Eh? We find the sensuality of the maturity of the Marsanne. And that's also very low. We can't say that the acidity is dominant. What is interesting also, we can have this signature of the granite that we call that sometimes petrichor. I don't know if you can say that. It's an American name. I don't know if you can say that petrichor in English. And that is, you know, there's a smell of the rain, the summer rain on the hot stone, which is very obvious when we speak of red wine on granite sometimes, but which is much more rare when we speak of white wine on granite. So now we will try to move to the red wine. When I was just speaking of granulite, and the granulite we will have on the red color. Sorry, I confused. You will not have it on the white color because it is very rare. But if you can, I didn't show the white Meissonier. Yep, and that was the bottle. You di Hongrie. It's not easy. Eh? That's for young people to do sort of things. So you don't have les granulite white, but you can, I'm sure, with the beautiful workmaker, beautiful importer hatch, you can find some, even if it's rare, you can find some in Great Britain. So Hongrie, why do they, question, why Hongrie? Because it was a place where there were a little river and people used to do the leather. There is a strong tradition of leather in the area. Of course, Louis Vuitton is very present in our area, but since through the centuries, you had always a very important and historical tradition of the work on the leather. Okay, we move to the red wine and we go to the, no, it's okay. Les Granulites. So this time we arrive on Syrah. Of course, I always say that now, more and more people say that. Thanks for the work of Jean-Michel Boursicot and Carol Meredith, who worked on the origin of the Syrah, and they discovered the parents were the white Mondeuse and the Dureza from Ardèche. Or just for information, white Mondeuse, so we know. Dureza are quite rare. We found some, we planted some. how can I say? Sometimes it's quite surprising. Some bad parents can make good children because I was not impressed by the Dureza. Maybe we will, so we did different things because we planted on domain pilots. But when you come to see, if you come to visit the winery Chapoutier, you can always ask to taste the Dureza, but it's experimentation. Probably that could be interesting for rosé or maybe for sparkling, but for red, it's not very interesting. But let's give one of the most beautiful grape in the world, the Syrah, which is born where the wedding place was. When we make archaeoampelography by the research of Poland, we discovered that the place was around Hermitage. So here we stay in Saint-Joseph. As I told you, it is granulate because in Saint-Joseph you have granite, but you have also granulite. So in English, maybe granulite, which is alkaline granite. You know, I like alkaline granite for another reason. Truffles. Truffles are on alkaline soil. Everybody look for truffles on alkaline soils in limestone. But few people knows that you can find some truffles on granite when you are on the alkaline granite. Interesting to know because probably the best truffles are on the granulate. So here we have a wine which is in organic farming because there is our vineyards, but there is also some young vine growers that we follow, and because we follow to help them to go to the movement from conventional, they move to organic, and after we help them to go to the biodynamic culture. So we buy the grapes. So a part of is from organic farming. For that this one is labeled in organic farming and not in biodynamic farming. Signature of the Syrah characteristic, we have always the black currant, the pepper, the violet, but then we can play with other signature. And here we have also the signature, of course, of the granite, which is the summer rain on the hot sun, you know. But you have also between graphite and tar. When I say tar, you know, when you walk in the mountains, in the old roads, and you have this tar which is burned by the sun, and when you walk on, there is a smell of tar. It is exactly this that we have by this signature of the Syrah. What I don't want to be chauvinistic, and a good wine lover should never be chauvinistic, but to defend my region, you know, you can visit plenty of winemakers, and you will remark when you make a tasting that you find the signature of the appellation more than the signature of the winemakers in the Rhone Valley. The signature of the Saint-Joseph, you can visit plenty of winemakers, you have this dominant of Saint-Joseph. The signature of Côte-Rôtie, you will have the signature of Côte-Rôtie. When you go to Cornas, and each time you have, I would say it's probably the wine area where on one grape, the difference of taste or the characteristic of taste of the appellation is so obvious. So, of course, all winemakers will explain that when you visit their region, they are in the best region. Of course, all, but with us, it's true. Yeah. So, the violet also. After a certain time of aération, airing, we have this nose of violet. It's interesting. That's the one which is done to be aged. But, je vais vous montrer la bouteille. But we are here on 2019. It is young. It is good. I'm always amazed. Of course, it's the stems. But also when you are working on granite, when people, there is on right bank, no, on the west bank of the Rhone, there were during a long time a tradition of not distemming in Cornas, in Saint-Joseph. And this tradition had a sense also because on these acid soils that you find there, you have a stem maturity which permit to have no bitterness even if you make if you don't destem the grape. So that's interesting because that's sort of, you know, sort of question, and sometimes which are, it's interesting to see the evolution, because slowly with the evolution, people probably will let more and more stems. Our philosophy is to stay stable and to not put stems in our Saint-Joseph, because like that we have, it's very wrong. So we have a wine which can be tasted young and with an interesting potential of aging, of course. Keep in mind, we can have this wine for 20, 25 years old with absolutely no problem. Spit inside, too good. And long. So we stay on the same side of the road. We go in. We move to the other side. We stay on the same grape, and we move to the Gros Hermitage, where we want to make an interesting game. You know, we have Hermitage. In Hermitage, we make some single vineyards. And in the tradition, people used to blend 3 soil of Hermitage. It was the Bessard, the Greffieux, and the Méal. And here, what we wanted to do on the Sycamore, which is a Gros Hermitage, we wanted to, that is the vineyards around Hermitage, at the bottom of Hermitage, and we wanted to take some from the north, which were on the granite part, some from the south on the, yes, on the, not the south, the, when I say from the north, some from, because it's true that Hermitage is facing south. So from the north, we are on granite. And I would say not on the south, but on the east of the Hermitage, where you have some interesting quaternary sediment. And then here we have another vineyard, which is extremely interesting. And at the bottom of Hermitage also. And the Sycamore, La Plaine des Châssis, the Sycamore, we try to do the imitation of the 3 soil that we find in Hermitage. We wanted to do that in the Gros Hermitage. So here also that is from our vineyard. So it is in biodynamic culture. And again, it is on Syrah 100%. So it's interesting because, of course, we are not on the same vintage. It is older than the Granillit 19. But the fact that we have this sediment from the Rhone comes from the influence of, you know, like the Greffieux that we will find in quite the same family near the north of the Châssis. We will have this signature of the soot, you know, in the fireplace. Of course, we have the blackcurrant, which is more a blackcurrant jam. The violet is much more, you know, discreet than what we had in the Saint-Joseph. We have the tar again, but the soot is more, and the graphite is more, I would say also ink, Chinese ink. What is interesting when we taste these different wines, it is for the Granillit or the Gros Sycamore, we have exactly the same philosophy of fermentation. These stems, a long fermentation, a long skin contact of between 4 to 6 weeks of skin contact. Only the free run wine is used. We age these wines in barrel. Important. When we speak of Syrah, we don't need to have 100% of new barrel with the level of alcohol, because we are easily around 13.5% of alcohol. If we would use 100% of new oak, we will extract a sappy taste. So it is important to, it's difficult to go over 20 to 25% of new oak. One of the evolution of our work also is when in the past we used to be in 225 liter barrique. More and more now we work between 400 and 600 liter barrique, because we want to have the exchange through the wood, but we don't want to extract the woody taste from the oak. That's interesting, because after, so we have between 12 to 15 months of aging in barrel. We don't find, and there is no filtration. There is a very large or flexible pre-filtration, which is like more tamisage, but there is no finding and no filtration like people do sometimes, because we consider we will take off too much from the wine. So of course, it's a wine to be aged, but it's also, again, a wine to taste. I don't know if I have to show the bottle. Si je t'ai montré? No, maybe pas. Voilà, sycamore. And to finish, we go to Châteauneuf-du-Pape, P6. So that's in Biodynamic. So we have, if you take a Châteauneuf-du-Pape, like Barberac, Croix de Bois, our single vineyards are with very old Grenache, 100% of Grenache. Here there is 30 to 35% of Syrah. It's a blending Grenache Syrah. Why P6? P6 is the Pope who died in Valence. It was, Bonaparte stopped him in Valence, because at this time he was a military in Valence, and he was very anti-clerical, Bonaparte. And the Pope died, and we still have in our cathedral the heart of the Pope. And he was also a personality on Châteauneuf-du-Pape, even if he was living in Rome at the beginning. And for this reason, we decided to call this wine P6 to the honor of this Pope and against Bonaparte. Sorry, I don't like Bonaparte because he recreated the slavery. So interesting. We have the Pinot Noir. We have the Grenache, which smell sometimes like a Pinot Noir. That means we have this wild cherry signature, Meurice. You have also red currant. And here, what is interesting, we don't find anymore the expression of the Syrah, which is on the spice. We come back on the Syrah more on the fruit, where we will be sometime more black currant, blackberry. We don't have the tar, we don't have all the signature that we had in the north. So our Châteauneuf-du-Pape, when they are 100% Grenache, never go in the wood. The Grenache, we keep that in concrete vat, brutal concrete. Why? Because the concrete will keep a portion of oxygen if it's brutal, so there is no wax inside. And this oxygen will permit to give the oxygen during the maturity of the Grenache in the concrete tank. But the Syrah will be put in barrel of 600 liters or 1200 liters, where we will have a better exchange, because if the Grenache is sensitive with oxidation, Syrah need oxygen to don't go to the reduction. So the idea is really to work the two wines and after to put them together. So I think I was quite in the time that they gave to me. I hope you like the tasting. It's not so easy. Sorry, I have to show the bottle of P6. But if you have not understood everything with my bad English, you are all welcome to visit us, and we can open other bottles or even taste on the barrel. The wine is always conviviality.